In this video, we will be doing an overview of how we read, where am I giving, and kind of what it's about, and how to do this for a book review. So I'm going to disappear, and you'll just see the presentation. All right, so where am I giving? This is an introduction to the book and the book review assignment. First thing we want to think about is who is Kelsey Timmerman? He is the author. We'll refer to him by his last name, Timmerman, even though he probably prefers to go by Kelsey. He's come to our campus twice for reading. He's the author of 3 books, but he's an Ohio native, so that's a good thing to think about. He grew up in Union City, graduated from Mississinewa High School. He went to Miami University to study anthropology and currently lives in Muncie, Indiana, just about an hour and a half away. His main thing is he loves to travel, so good for him. How did he start? Well, how did he become an author? Well, it kind of was an accident. He worked in Aruba, I think it was Aruba or Honduras, one of the two. I can't remember exactly. He explains it in his first book, but he taught scuba diving in the summers, and then would use that money to then travel and see different places. So he just had a love of travel and wasn't really doing much with his degree. He saw that one of his t-shirts was made in Honduras and went to the factory and met somebody who worked in the factory. They didn't make that shirt anymore, but he was just kind of interested in the lives of those who work to make our lives what they are, whether it's clothing or food or other things. So what has he done? He's the author of 3 books. They all follow the same sort of trend, and I realized I wasn't consistent in the capitalization, but it should not be capitalized am. Where am I wearing? Where am I eating? And where am I giving? He's also the co-founder of this Facing Project, which is a nonprofit storytelling group that is in about 100 communities. So it's just storytelling, trying to connect people. So real quick, where am I wearing? Looks at the clothing that we wear, the lives of the people who make our clothes in Indonesia, China, Vietnam, and the Caribbean. Where am I eating? Looks at the people who grow our food. He goes to a banana farm, he goes to coffee farms, he goes to a chocolate plantation. So lots of different places like that. He also talks to people in the United States as well. So it's an interesting little project. And then there's where am I giving, which should have a question mark. I'm sorry. I'll put that in. Where am I giving? And we'll talk about that book in just a moment. He is working on a 4th book, which is looking more at agriculture in the United States. And so it's not going to follow the where theme, but it's going to be interesting as well. So what's the point? All of Kelsey's books, Timmerman's books, explores the interconnectedness of people around the world. And that's an important thing because we are part of globalization. I'll talk about globalization in just a little bit. He shares the story of ordinary people trying to make a living for themselves. Ordinary, as I've been saying that multiple times, but ordinarily when we go on vacation, see something in another country, we see the best of something, right? Unless you're going specifically to help people out, like on a mission work, you are going to a resort in Cancun, or you're going to tourist attractions in Europe or wherever. You're seeing the nice parts. Rarely do we see ordinary people, and that's what Kelsey is interested in. He shows that people are people regardless of where they live. We all want the same things, have the same needs and wants and desires. We care about our families, and we want our kids to do better than us. We work, we want to go to school, those things. So he lets us, he lets us see the contrast between our lives and the lives of others. So what is Where Am I Giving doing? You want to look at the book. The first impression should show you that this book is about the importance of giving to others. You'll see it in the subtitle, The Global Adventure Exploring How to Use Your Gifts and Talents to Make a Difference. The inside cover, if you look at the cover, is going to discuss the book and how it helps readers think what it means to be a global citizen, and gives it shows us that giving is more than just about monetary contribution. It changes others and it changes you. So first, let's look at globalization. Globalization is the interdependence of national economies and cultures due to business, trading, and social interaction, meaning that no country really stands alone on their own anymore. We know what's happening all around the world thanks to 24-hour news coverage. We might have friends in other countries. We've been to other countries, buy and sell goods in other countries, whether it's um, our farmers in our area selling soybeans to the local um, processor who then sells them overseas, right? That's an important thing. And so we can see the impact. We buy and sell goods to other countries. That should be a plural. Um, and then we listen to music, we watch shows, eat food, and adopt fashion trends from other countries, whether it's eating sushi, getting involved in Japanese culture. Several of you mentioned that you like K pop music. So, aside from what is popular, right, you start to develop other things. You might watch shows in other countries, or other countries might watch our shows. So it becomes very interesting. What this means is that we have a shared influence. We influence other cultures as much as they influence us. It might be political ideas, religious ideas, philosophies, medical things, products, foods, and even processes of doing things. Money, of course, is always a big influence. Where can companies produce their goods or services the cheapest? Help desks in India, or clothing made in various countries around the world. Those things are important because it changes those countries. Even if they're making what to us seems like poverty wages, it's still more than what they were making before, and leads to changes in their lifestyle. They have more consumer power, and they can buy things. They can get to and from work easier by being able to buy a bike and then a motorcycle and then eventually a car. Education, they'll be able to send their kids to school and change their lives there. It gives them more opportunities for health, clean food and water, and just overall well-being. It becomes interesting. So it matters because we are participants in globalization regardless of whether or not we want to be or not. But how we do that participation is shaping the lives of others. And by telling these stories that, okay, well, here's a person in Vietnam living with 5 other people in a 8 by 10 room, yet they're happy with their lives. They see their lives as better now working in this condition than it could have been had they stayed on the family farm, right? So the storytelling shows us something. We might be more conscious consumers. Does it matter if a product to you is made by someone forced into slave labor? He talks about that in Where Am I Eating, where he visits a cocoa farm and realizes that one of the guys that he's speaking with is pretty much an indentured servant or a slave. And that's a life that this person chose. It's not what we think of today as slavery, from the United States, but it is a form of slavery where the guy's doing work without being paid for it. And that's kind of problematic because we all love chocolate, and knowing that cheap chocolate might be the product of someone else's pain and suffering, how do we feel about that, or do we just not care? And why don't you care? Do you want the people growing your food and making your products to be well treated, paid a decent wage, have good working hours and good working conditions? Or do you not care that the person who's making your blue jeans is working with toxic chemicals or an unsafe condition, or working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week? Do you not care because, hey, cheap blue jeans, or whatever? But those are conditions to think about. We might hear all the time, well, why do I care about them? We have our own problems here. Well, Kelsey isn't saying that we shouldn't think about America or United States workers or anything like that, but he says that, all around the world, these are questions we should ask. And he's just telling us stories and isn't telling us necessarily what to think. Another term that he uses a lot is this word glocal. It's global and local. So he wants us to live both globally and locally. Go to your local farmers market, but also buy things from around the world. That sort of stuff. We as Americans have amazing spending power, and how we choose to spend our money has a big impact. We might just only look for made in USA products, and that's good, but it's not the end all be all. We know that most products made in the USA are often more expensive because you have to pay workers more. So we often go for the cheaper goods that are made in China and India. And knowing where those goods come from and the conditions in which those people work is important. I heard a story a couple years ago about a guy who went to jail in China, and part of what they had to do was string together Christmas lights. They had to make, actually weave and make Christmas lights in this jail cell with 20 other guys. And then those lights were sold to a major company to be sold in the United States. Is that problematic? And how do we know? The company says, oh, we don't engage in that, but how are they going to know? It's worth knowing who gets your money. You can't control what they do with it, but you can control who gets it. As we read our book, I want you to think of this as a long process that you're going to take notes on, because the more notes you take now, the less you'll have to reread and do later. So begin by taking notes of your expectations. What does the cover show you? What does promotional material show you? How does the book entice you to read it? And what does this book promise you? We have to think about anything we are reading or consuming making a promise. It wants us to buy it or read it or consume it for whatever reason. What are those reasons? Take notes of what you know and how you think these things will shape the book. So we'll do some pre-reading. Look at the table contents. What stands out to you? What do you notice? What seems interesting and what is confusing? Consider the length. Is it too long? Do these chapters seem long? They're about 25 pages. Organization. How are the parts arranged? There's 4 parts and then there's a back section. Do the chapters seem to go together? Or is it confusing? Do you prefer a different type of storytelling? Additional pre-reading. Flip through your book and what do you see? Look at pictures. Look for things that stand out. Does the book appear easy to read? Is the font large enough, right? Does the book seem to invite you to read it? And start thinking about reading notes. Have a notebook or a journal or something that you can write in and come back to. Look for what you think the purpose of this book is. Write that down. Look for the statement of the author in this purpose. And usually there's an introduction. Is the introduction sufficient? Look for themes or main ideas as you go along. Look for examples. Where does he go? Who does he meet? And what do they have in common? If you notice that he only talks to males, what does that tell you? If you notice that he only talks with the poorest of the poor, what does that tell you? Is it providing a reasonable sample? So look at those things. As you read, I want you to consider what you know and don't know. How does the author accommodate these things? Does he provide you with information and background stories that will help you understand things later? Is he constantly referring to things that happened in history or in his other books or in a way that you feel lost? Or does he provide good information? Do you feel you're being spoken to by the author? How is he engaging you? What are the ways the author's trying to get you to think about things, specifically his purpose? Again, you go back to what you think his purpose is. How consistent are the messages in this book? What is the tone of the author's voice? Right? Is he lecturing us? Is he reaching us? Is he engaging? Is he pleading? Those are important things to consider. And then finally, as you read, I want you to take notes. You might not want to mark in your book, and that's okay. But take notes on a separate sheet of paper, write down the page number, and then just comment on it. You can highlight passages that stand out or flag your pages with post-it notes or whatever. Write down questions you would want to ask the author if you could speak to him. You might get the chance. And then take your time. Start early, right? So start today. Don't wait until the book is due or the review is due. It's going to be too late. So I hope this helps. Have a great time reading this book.